Hola. Hola, buenas tardes. Good afternoon to everyone in our YouTube transmission. My name is Catalina. My name is Catalina, and I represent here the digital platform Makemake, o la plataforma de libros y de lectura Makemake. Y estamos muy contentos de tener hoy nuestro primer evento para las bibliotecas y colegios de los Estados Unidos. This will be our first live event for libraries and schools in the US. And so today, as opposed to our usual events in Makemake, we will be speaking in English. And we're very thrilled to have three guests from Puerto Rico, Colombia, and the US. And we will have them join us very shortly, or I should say right away and immediately. The first person I will invite is my colleague, Maria Alejandra, and I'm going to add her to the transmission magically. Hi, Maria Alejandra.
Hola, Cata. Hi, everyone.
Hola. Para quienes nos conocen, quizás les parezca exótico que entre las dos nos estemos hablando en inglés, pero normalmente hablamos en español. Quiero tranquilizarlas y a tranquilizarlos, pero hoy vamos a estar hablando en inglés porque tenemos tres invitadas muy especiales que nos van a hablar sobre la lectura en bibliotecas y la educación en casa y en los colegios bilingüe. We will be talking about reading and education at home and in our public libraries and schools in both Spanish and English. Our event will be in English, and so we appreciate if you ask your questions in English, in Spanish, we can translate them back to our guests in English, but they are all bilingual anyway, so I'm sure we can understand each other in both languages. Nos podremos entender en ambos idiomas con sus comentarios y sus preguntas. María Alejandra, dejo el escenario en tus manos para que presentes a nuestras tres invitadas. Yo las voy a poner en la pantalla.
Perfecto.
Y dejo el escenario.
Listo. Gracias, Cata. Bueno, ahí están nuestras tres invitadas. Antes que nada, I'm going to introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Maria Pautasi. I recently joined the Makemake team, where I am responsible for communications, appropriations, and alliances for the United States. And along with Catalina, I will be hosting some of these events in our English and bilingual program. So as Catalina was saying, today we are going to be discussing a topic that is very dear to us at Makemake and to all of our panelists here today: how to make reading in Spanish a meaningful experience at home and the library. Our objective is to provide you with tools on how to promote reading in Spanish, how to make it fun, how to tie it to your child's experience, how to provide context, in order to make it a useful tool in learning the language. So today we have Maritere Rodriguez Velas. She is an award-winning author, bilingual parenting expert, bilingual parenting mentor, speaker, writer, podcast and Instagram live host, and social media influencer. She is the author of several books, including Raising Bilingual Children, Cómo criar niños bilingües, Arroz con pollo and apple pie, Raising Bicultural Children, Arroz con pollo y apple pie, Cómo criar niños biculturales, Luisito's Island, La Isla de Luisito, and I Have a Secret, Tengo un secreto. Mari raised 2 children with 2 languages and 3 cultures, and she lives with her Greek-American husband in Southern California. Hi, Mari. It's so good to have you here. Welcome. We also have Marines McCormick. She is a Colombian journalist and awarded children's book author living in France. As a Colombian immigrant in Europe, she experienced the difficulties of raising a bilingual, bicultural family and decided to create her own project called Curuba y Cocuyo, a web page and a digital toolbox to help other Colombian immigrants to keep Spanish as a second language at home. And then we have Melissa Wise, who is the Youth Engagement and World Languages Librarian at the Austin Public Library. In addition to being passionate about early literacy, she is a lover of languages and provides story times in, listen to this, French, Japanese, and Spanish at her library. So welcome to all of you. We are very excited to have you here. This is going to be a wonderful panel. So, and before we begin, if you are watching this via YouTube and are interested in following our program in English and in Spanish, don't forget to hit subscribe or follow us on Facebook and Instagram for more information on upcoming events. Okay, so we are going to start now by talking about the big question today. What are the benefits of bilingual education? And I would like to start off with Maritere. Mari, can you please tell us a little bit about your experience in bilingual education? And can you please also tell us what are some of the benefits of this sort of education for children?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me to be among you today. I'm super excited. So growing up, I was raised with Spanish at home and English at school. I had the opportunity to travel and to study abroad. I was 18 when I had the experience of seeing firsthand little kids would speak in 3 or 4 languages around me. And I also had the experience of learning about all those cultures, and I was totally hooked. I knew then how rich one's life could be by being bilingual, multilingual, and multicultural. So fast forward, 25 so years later, when I had my children, my husband and I made a decision that they would be raised bilingual and multicultural. He is Greek American, very tied to his Greek culture. And, I'm from Puerto Rico. And if you know a Puerto Rican, you know that our culture is everything to us. And we're American. We raised our children here in California. So benefits from positive effects on intellectual growth and a child's mental development, cognitive advantages in the areas of self-control, solving conflicts, multitasking, language skills like communication skills. The bilingual children tends to be more tolerant and accepting and understanding of other cultures. They're more confident, self-assured. Of course, career advantages are, innumerable. And, there's many of us parents that want our children to be bilingual so they can communicate with their families and preserve the culture. So that in a nutshell is all the benefits that I think you all might know them and we would agree.
Yeah, thank you, Mari. Marines, you also live abroad and have for a long while. Why is it important for you and your family that your children have a bilingual, multicultural education?
Well, hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be with you tonight. My story is kind of similar with Mariteri because my husband, I'm Colombian, as you said before, and I married a French guy. So my husband's family, they're French. They don't speak Spanish. My Colombian family, they don't speak French. And we got kids. We realized that for both of us, it was really important that our girls could communicate with both sides of the family. And in our personal experience, I have one of my sisters-in-law. She's French, and she moved to the States, but she couldn't get along with the bicultural process of like transmitting the culture and the French language to their kids. And now their kids are grown up and they can't communicate with the grandparents. So we have this experience very close to us. And we said, we don't want the same thing. And I want to say that it's difficult. The raising a bilingual, bicultural kid, it's a huge effort. And I understand when families said it's like a mental load. It's too hard. We don't have the patience because it's like a marathon, you get exhausted. And it's a project that even if you know that there are a lot of benefits, those benefits, they arrive in time. Maybe you're going to see the fruits in 4 or 5 years, 10 years. Some benefits are right away, but the other takes time. So the families, they just give up. And for us, I got the chance that my husband, he speaks English and Spanish. So I didn't have to convince him or demonstrate to him that it was important to speak another language. So in my household, that has been a very good. I have the chance to have a partner who believes in bilingualism and who believes in multicultural. So for us, it was like an evidence.
Yeah, thank you, Marines. Just out of quick curiosity, what language do you speak at home with your kids?
I speak Spanish because I immigrate in my in my 30s. So I've been living in Colombia 33 years, and I've been living in France since 2008. So for me, it was natural to speak to my girls in Spanish. And, for example, all the rhythms, all the little songs, baby songs, lullabies, everything, I knew it in Spanish. I didn't know it in French. I learned now. I can sing in French. But for me, it was like, I want my kids to understand me as a Colombian, and my girls now, they know that their mother is Colombian. And they can relate to that, because I don't know what's your experience, but you're not the same person in a different language. There's a Maria Inés in Spanish, there's a Maria Inés in English, there's a Maria Inés in French, and it's like 3 personalities at the same time. So I want my girls to understand me the way I am and why I am the way I am. And sometimes my girls said, okay, mama, that's Colombian thing, that's Colombian mama, Colombian side, Colombia crazy mama. Okay, that's Colombia crazy mama, and I love that they can get this multicultural part of it.
That's great, Marines. Thank you, Melissa. Now, for you, how does a bilingual and multicultural education benefit a community as a whole?
So just like Maritere was talking about, the ways that it builds an individual child's brain to be better able to focus, better at solving problems, better at making decisions, better at planning, those are things, as we raise our children, so do we raise our communities. And so having children who have really strong senses of self and who are able to focus and plan and prioritize, that is really helpful to our communities as a whole, because these children will be the leaders and the pillars of the community. Like we're building our community by building up our children. And there are lots of studies that show that children who are raised bilingually and biculturally are also more empathetic. And there's just so much going on these days, like really like toxic, divisive politics, lots of like us versus them, arguments that come down to sort of cultural intolerance and misunderstanding, like misinterpretations. So I think that having more people in our communities who are built like they have grown up seeing all of these different perspectives, and they have empathy for the people involved in these us versus them like line drawing, I think that makes us all stronger, and it makes us all safer. The more people we have in our communities who work to understand each other, that's a really powerful thing.
Yeah, Melissa, that's great. Thank you. That's very powerful. You just said, especially that part about empathy. I think that is something we really need to start cultivating in our communities. I'm going to jump back to Maria Inés because she said something about the challenges. And I really wanted to ask you, what are the main challenges for successfully promoting a secondary language, in this case, Spanish? And how can reading mediators, parents, librarians, teachers overcome these challenges?
Well, I think there are a lot of challenges, but I guess for Spanish or any other minority language, when you compare it to English, in Colombia, maybe Maritere was the same thing growing up in Puerto Rico. You don't need to convince people in Colombia to learn English because it's everywhere. The students, your family. In Colombia, there's a lot of parents who enroll their kids in bilingual schools because you say you need to learn English to have a better job opportunities, to achieve educational goals. So it's everywhere. So in your mind, I need to learn English. But then when you're growing up in the States or Australia, England, it's more difficult to you need to demonstrate other people that it's important to learn another language. And I guess the challenge is to really convince people that it's useful, that Spanish or Italian or German, but today we're talking about Spanish, that Spanish is fun, Spanish is useful. The benefits are right away. It can be fun, I can relate. So that's the first point. And sometimes the families you need as an immigrant to convince your own partner, their in-laws, the school teacher, the doctors, everyone in your community. And when you're alone and trying to convince everybody that Spanish is important, so it's a huge load. And another challenge is you need really to be an example. It's like when you're telling your kids, you need to eat your vegetables, you need to read, you need to do exercise. But me, I don't do anything of those things. I eat, junk food. I stay in front of the TV. I don't do exercise. No, I mean, if you think Spanish is important, you need to give some life to Spanish. Language must be alive. So I'm a parent. If I don't speak Spanish to my kids, if I don't use it, if I don't think in Spanish, if I don't read in Spanish, if I don't dance, if I don't cook, if I don't invite Spanish in my household, my kids are gonna say, "You say that it's important, mom or dad, but you never use it." So we need to be, kind of coherent with our speech and get involved and give example to our kids that it's. And if we say that Spanish is fun, show it. Show me why Spanish funny. For example, you have a toddler. You can start doing some little games with them, about your fingers, Este dedito fue al mercado, este compró un huevito, este se lo comió, este lo revolvió. All those oral games and what we used to play when we were kids, everything, it's an opportunity to pass your language and your culture. But you have to give the kids examples that it's feasible.
Yes, no, Marinés, thank you very much. Maritere, I think you may have something to add here. What in your experience, what are the challenges? What can you add to what Marinés was saying?
Well, I agree with her. And, she was talking earlier that, raising bilingual children and raising children that will love Spanish, I think education is the key. The more we know about the benefits of reading and understand and appreciate those benefits, the better for the child. The most important thing is attitude. That attitude that we have as adults, as parents, as librarians, as teachers, it benefits not only our home, inside the home, but also the community as a whole. And it's that attitude that we have to bring outside when we go outside the door. We are proud. We want our children to be proud of speaking Spanish, of being bilingual, of being multicultural. I always tell parents that in today's world, everyone that has younger children, my kids are older now, they're young adults, but everyone raising children today, you are all raising multicultural children, don't matter where you live and where you are. And the best thing we can do as parents is, before they even start school, is expose these children to all the books that talk about all these different cultures and the different nationalities and the races and everything that, will teach them to become that acceptant person and respectful of others. And that's what creates this whole community that really respects each other. And it's just that way we can all be good examples for us, for our children, not only our children, but everyone else's children. So it's a process. A family language plan helps a lot. And within that plan is the reading. It's also involving everyone. I always tell parents, it takes a village. And in that village is my neighbor, my family, my, the doctor, the librarian, everyone in the circle of my children can help in that process of me raising a bilingual child. So I think that's the challenge. Is there's so much more information these days and education out there. We should all take advantage of it and support each other that way.
Thank you, Maritere. And just Melissa, if you can add anything real short from the perspective of the librarian, what are the challenges if you are working in a public institution such as a library or etc.?
So one of the main challenges is, even though lots of studies show how beneficial bilingualism is to children, we're still fighting against some of the old myths and misperceptions of, oh, but won't my child be confused if I introduce another language? Or, oh, how will they be able to process learning two at a time? Is it going to slow them down? And all of the studies that just really show, no, it doesn't hurt them. It only helps. It's only a good thing. And so struggling with that, with informing the families that the library serves, has been really the biggest struggle there.
Yeah, and for example, how do you overcome that? How do you inform the families of this? How do you do this in the everyday life?
So we talk to them about what we have seen come out recently, like the New York Times had an article, and this is helping too, is we're getting more media coverage for the benefits of bilingualism. But the New York Times had an article that said bilinguals are smarter. And I was like, yes. And then we sort of put it up all over the library, like just encouraging folks to have fun, and that all parents are worried about, like, is my child falling behind? So that's a particularly pernicious myth when they hear that maybe learning another language makes their kid fall behind. Everybody's a little scared, right? So just reassuring them and talking them through, this is what studies show. And doing lots of fun, engaging story times. And they can see, like, oh, well, Melissa speaks a couple of languages. She turned out all right. Like, just showing them that it's wonderful, and their kids are going to be not only fine, but great.
Great. Thank you, Melissa. I wanted to go back to Maritere now that we're speaking a little bit about the context in the United States. How can we make reading in Spanish, especially books about Latin American topics, closer to the experience of a boy and a girl living in the United States, where everything is, different as what, you see in those books?
Well, we need to write those stories. We need to bring those stories to the libraries. I recently wrote a post about, I happen to be going to the children's, my local library, and I went to the children's department or the children's area, and I couldn't find any of the books that had been released in Spanish or bilingual in the last 3 years. There were none. Everything that they had were old books that had been translated into Spanish. Yes, classics are wonderful. I mean, my kids grew up with that. My children had no books, ladies and gentlemen. I had to come up when my sister would send me books from Puerto Rico, but mostly they were the classics translator into English, or Spanish. So I think that the libraries need to have these books. We need to bring these books to our local libraries. We as parents and as teachers need to go ask for these books. Within the The post I wrote last week, I gave a whole list of ideas. Come prepare with a list, talk to your neighbors, talk to the teachers, follow some of these accounts that are coming up with book reviews all the time, books that are coming out in Spanish, books that are coming out in English. That's what we need to do. We need to be supportive of these stories and these books and the authors that have taken the time to write these books. So that's the most important thing. I think we just need to make sure these books are in all the libraries.
Yeah, thank you, Maritere. Yes, Melissa, go ahead.
I did want to say, for any librarians who are watching, so my library has all sorts of rules because it's run by the city about where we can purchase books. And so we really struggle to get authentic books in Spanish. And I mean books written originally in Spanish. Like, we have that same struggle that Maritere is talking about in having authentic books in Spanish on our shelves rather than translations of, whatever American classic. And the other, I lost my train of thought. The other thing that frequently happens in the US is that we talk about foreign languages. And we talk about this is a language that they speak far away. And really, like, in our libraries, in our families in the States, we need to be talking about, no, Spanish is right here. This is a language that lives in the United States just as it lives everywhere else, and people here. So I want to see more books, and we're seeing some of them now, but more books coming out showing Spanish speakers living their lives in the States as well as Spanish speakers living their lives elsewhere, and seeing both of those authentic experiences represented.
Thank you, Melissa. That was great. I actually wanted to ask you, before you were mentioning that you have your bilingual story times, and I really wanted to ask you how do you select the books for those bilingual story times, one, and two, what are the benefits of those bilingual story times?
So selecting books can be difficult because the same struggle that we have with authentic books written first in Spanish, we have it with Japanese and French as well. Tell me the first part of the question again. I got lost.
How do you select the books for these bilingual story times?
So it sort of depends on your audience. We get a lot of it, and it'll depend from time to time. If we have an audience full of native speakers, I would choose different, more textually complex and culturally complex books for a group of more native speakers. And for non-native speakers, if we had mostly English language speakers coming to our dual language story times, we would work to choose a book that was approachable, but that also exposed some cultural aspect of the language that we're targeting in that story time, so that we could expose them to a cultural aspect. And then I like to choose books that have a lot of action in them. There are a lot of really fabulous picture books for children that are really quite metaphorical and poetic. And I have found that in a dual language story time, those don't work quite as well as one that's action-based, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't that also have to do with your with the grade level, the age of the children, maturity level and age level?
Absolutely, it would. Absolutely. And our story times are largely for ages 0 through 5. But we do get school-age children as well. It actually can become quite a difficult process to choose the right book.
Great. No, thank you, Melissa, for those insights. You were also talking about, expose cultural aspects with what you are reading. And I actually had this question for Maria Inés, but again, if later on someone else wants to add anything to this, would be great. It has to do with the importance of context. Why is it, and I think we had a discussion before today with Maria Inés about this, but why is it important to contextualize books in Spanish, and especially those having to do with Latino or Latin American, or in your case, Latin American topics in France?
Well, first of all, we need to understand that our kids are third cultural kids. For example, my girls are, or any of your kids in the United States, if a kid is growing up in the United States, both their parents are from Peru, Argentina, Mexico, your child is not living the same experience as you did, because they're in a different state, different weather, the school system is different, and they're living all these formative years, preschool, elementary, middle school, and high school in another country. So even if they can relate to their heritage, they are not completely Colombian, they are not 100% Peruvian or, I don't know, Uruguayan. They're not. They're half. They're 50-50, or maybe 70-30. So you need to embrace and accept the multiculturalism in your child. I mean, we say all the time, bicultural is good, bilingual is good. So prove it. Love your kid as it is. He is bicultural or multicultural. So embrace that characteristic of your child. So books about Latin America, they're fabulous ways to explain the roots of your family. To explain, Mama, why my name is Juan Perez? Why my name is not John Brown? Why? Why we're Perez? Okay, why my color of skin? Why grandpa and grandma, they don't speak English? Tell me. So all those stories are a good example. It's like the pieces of a puzzle that helps to make sense and to explain the world to your kids, and also explain why we immigrate to the United States, and help you to show them that the world is bigger than the little village or the little city where they're growing up. But I think it's also important to present kids with stories where they can relate, like the stories of other Latino immigrants, kids like them, who are growing up in Texas, in Miami, whatever, because they can relate to those stories as well. So it's important to, to try to find, say, the equilibrio between a balance between the stories of Latin America, but also, as Melissa said, Spanish is not something far away from, it's not the home country of my grandparents. It's something that I live in my daily basis. Maybe it's the language that I used to speak with my friends.
And Marines and anyone else in the panel, if you want to jump in, how do you do that? Like very puntualmente. Sorry. How do you do that?
Well, for my girls, little tips and advice. For example, if you've had a baby or a toddler, I used, silent books. It's books that are only images. Mm-hmm. So you don't have the problem of the language, because you can describe the image and you can create your own story. So that's a good tip if you don't have access to books in Spanish. So you can use whatever silent book there is. Sometimes I use books in French in my case, and I translate it to my kids when I travel to Colombia, or when, Spain is near France, so I went to Spain, or I order books in Spanish from Spanish books in Amazon. But I think we can create our own stories to our kids. It's like using your imagination, oral, because your kid wants to be with you. He wants to share time with you at the end of the day. So you can feel all this time that you spend with your kid, narrating, inventing your own stories.
Okay, great. Maritere.
Yes, you're creating that connection with the language. But like Marines is saying, my children are 50% Puerto Rican. They love Puerto Rico, but they're not going to be as Puerto Rican as I am. I had a different cultural experience, and as a mom, I have to understand that and appreciate that. So if I'm sitting over here criticizing the American culture every 5 minutes, what does that tell my children? That's not a good example. So we want to read to them or tell them stories that they can identify with. They can learn about their costumes and the traditions, their culture, share those stories with them. And we need to write those books. So Marinés, Melissa, let's write more of these books. We need more of these experiences of our, cultures, things that you, Marinés, you lived in Colombia, things that I lived in Puerto Rico, and want to share those with the children that are out there today. We all have stories in our heads of our experiences, our cultural and language experiences that we can write about and share that with our children.
Yeah, and I would like to close this question with Melissa. If you can go back and tell us how specifically you as a librarian contextualize or, create or make these stories more relatable to the children you read at the library.
This is a great question. I really like it. So in a lot of our dual language story times, we have I take a moment before we launch into a book. For example, the book that kept popping into my mind when I was thinking about this question was, what can you do with rebozo? And it's a great book about all the different uses that rebozo has. And some of the things that you can do in a story time like that, you can bring in an example of what you're talking about, and you can show the kids how it's used and how it could be used, and you can use it as a prop while you're reading that book. I also really like to, not everything is as tangible as a piece of cloth that you bring in, but a lot of times before we read a book, I'll do a little bit of explanation of the cultural tidbit, the thing that we're going to get into that they want to have more context for before we read the story. And it actually turns into a really sweet moment in story time. Kids do not lack the ability to understand something that is either from far away or something that is far from their experience. They do it all the time in movies. They do it all the time in all sorts of books that they read. And so taking a moment to explain it, it puts everybody on that same page, but it also turns into a really lovely thing for the kids in the Storytime audience who are culturally native to perhaps the culture that you're reading about in the book. And it really makes them feel seen and important. And if they're comfortable with talking in front of a group, it can really be a magical thing to be like, hey, so tell us a little bit about XYZ. And it's sort of, for the other kids in the room, it's like, oh, this is not far away. This is him. This is my friend right here. It's a really lovely moment. Like, it's important to contextualize it before you get into the book, but then that moment also becomes a really special thing.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna move on to one of our last topics, and it has to do with a sense of community. One of the biggest challenges in promoting bilingualism is that you often require the support of a community, not only your partner or the dad or whoever, but that you really need to be surrounded by other people that encourage that sort of education. My question is for Maritere, where can you find this community, or how can you start building it?
Well, you can follow me on Instagram. Well, the beauty of the last, I say three years, is that there are many online bilingual communities today that were not around 3 years ago, even 4 years ago. They're communities that are supportive. They motivate you. They plenty of resources. This is not only for parents, but also there's a big community out there of Spanish teachers that are, have accounts and that share a lot of good material out there. For example, there's Fun for Spanish Teachers, there's Mrs. Cabello, there's My Escuelita, Spanish at Cedar Hill. I'm happy to send you a list that you can share with the audience. And for parents, there's from 0 to 10. There's a lot of good communities out there, like Bilinguitos and Bilingual Playdate. And, what I love about Billy Kids, La Leo, it's La Leo Bilingual Therapy. She's a speech pathologist that talks about all these myths that Melissa was talking about, and confusion versus not confusion. And, I just wrote this post this week about what language should we start reading first, and it talks a little bit about that. Facebook and Instagram has great communities, and if you follow them, you will learn something new every day, because there's a lot of these accounts that post a suggestion or a tip or a new flashcard or new materials that you can use in your classrooms. And I think books, we do a lot of book reviews. I include myself in the community. I'm the older one in the group. I started this over 25 years ago. So they all see me as a mentor, and we all support each other very much. There's also, I know I have to go. There's also a big non-native community out there that is raising kids with Spanish. And it's a beautiful thing to see how important this is to them. And they're speaking in Spanish at home, and they want their children to be bilingual, Spanish, English.
Yeah. Thank you, Maritere, for all those great resources. So to the people who are watching this and who are registered, we're going to be sending you afterwards a list of resources where you will be able to find either these communities or other resources on how to bring up your child bilingually or multiculturally. I would like to move on to Maria Inés and ask her, so how have you been able, so what are the challenges of, finding a community abroad, and how have you found this community in France? Or any
Well,
people,
I would say, yeah, I will say that Maritere said it's social media. Social media is, like the answer, because there's a lot of Facebook groups, Instagram accounts where you can find information, podcast, as Maritere has a wonderful podcast. And I want to share a very important thing is try to find materials in Spanish. Again, English, it's wonderful. French is wonderful. But if we want to show our kids that Spanish is important, we need to leverage Spanish.
Exactly.
I understand that so many people, maybe the second or third generation of immigrants, they grew up in the States, so they feel more comfortable speaking in English. Or sometimes, you understand Spanish, but you're not very, you're not that confident. But if you want to pass the language to your kid, you need to get moving and get some life to it. So there's a lot of resources, even in Spanish. Listen, Maritere's podcast is a wonderful podcast, and it's in Spanish. So as a parent, you need to practice, because the first person, if you want to teach Spanish to your kid is going to talk to you. You are the first person avec, pardon. Sometimes I mix with French. So it's started. But my invitation is go and get information and resources in Spanish, because if you're, it's give it some example. And yeah, social media is like the answer to our prayers for resources in bilingualism.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Maritere, go ahead.
No. Like we were talking about, it's a process. It could be it was very lonesome for me. And I am so excited and happy that, parents like Maria Inés and Maria, I don't know if you have children, but the parents that have younger kids that are not alone anymore. I mean, there is this community that supports you. I see it in Facebook all the time and in Instagram as well. So, reach out and know that there is a community out there that wants to help you and wants to support you in your everyday. And of course, having librarians like Melissa help a lot, because, you know, we should all be very friendly with our local librarian and support each other, and just go to her with the list and say, hey, what about these books, and what are your guidelines? What do you need? How do we make this happen? And how can I help your reading program? Maybe there's a group of parents that can take turns reading and talking about their culture before and conceptualize it, just like she's saying. So there's a lot we can do these days, and there's a lot of support. So I hope that you all reach out and take a leap of faith. That means you're giving your child a gift, because speaking in Spanish is a gift. So stay with it.
Thank you, Maritere. That was great. I was actually, we're gonna have, this is the last question, and it's for Melissa. We want to leave a little bit of time at the end of this event for questions from the audience. But the question for Melissa is, and this is tying it up with what Maritere was just saying at the end, is what steps can libraries take to foster such a community, and how has the Austin Public Library created or strived to create this community?
Yeah, so one of the ways that a public library can foster community like this is to continue to offer really language-rich programs like Storytime. And it also is what we need to do to work toward those programs is to bolster our collection. One of the ways that we do that, like Maritere said, is we need to hear from library users, library patrons. What books do you want to see on the shelf? What programs do you want to see us doing? And I think a lot of people forget, people think of libraries as the books, and sure, we're definitely the books, but we also are the community space. So I know everyone is hungry for connection, and social media has made this miracle of connection come true for all of us. You can find anybody, like any community you're looking for. It lives online and you can get to them. But your library also has a lot of space that we want you to come use. Like, come and do a parenting meetup, a bilingual parenting meetup. So we are actually at the Austin Public Library, we are working towards some things like that by engaging more directly with our community to find out what people want to see within our walls. We do have programs. We have a program called Practiquemos Español, which is for anyone who wants to come in and practice their Spanish, any level of, preferably, it helps to have some conversational level, but we accept all levels. And then we have a counterpart that is talk time, and it is for folks to come in and practice their English. And it's really lovely to see people build relationships in these language programs. You're really connecting people that would not otherwise have been in a room together. And the next level thing that libraries can do is to partner with community organizations. Like here in Austin, we have the Mexican American Cultural Center. We have Mexicarte, which is a museum and education center. Like, you can partner with the organizations in town that serve the communities that you're hoping to bring together, because those communities exist in town, and if the library's not involved with them, it's only because we haven't made the right connections. So reaching out to the communities and to the organizations that are serving the communities is a really excellent way for a library to help foster that community.
Okay. No, thank you, Melissa. It's really nice. It's great to hear how, through this Practica Español, relationships are being made, because at the end, language is about that, creating relationships, just connecting with each other. So thank you. I guess so it's 4:50. We have 10 minutes for questions, and I'm going to ask the first question. It is right now being projected on the screen. If I'm right, I understand this is for Maritere. And it says, I don't live in the States, but I have a family there, and I have tried to get my cousins to read in Spanish or speak to me in Spanish, but I haven't been able to do it. Do you have any recommendations? And again, if anyone else from the panel wants to jump in, feel welcome to. I'm just gonna connect, I'm sorry, I'm gonna connect my laptop because I'm running out of battery, but please go ahead.
Well, I don't have a lot of information just by that question. How old are your cousins? Are these little cousins that you're trying to teach Spanish to, or that you would want the parents to teach them Spanish? So it's kind of like a difficult question to ask. I would say having a conversation about how important it is for you to communicate with them, but you can't make someone do something they don't want to do. Perhaps you can share information that will teach them the value and the benefits of speaking Spanish, and that might help. Encourage them to follow some of these accounts that we were talking about, and perhaps they would feel like, oh, okay, so if this community is doing this, maybe I can join in and do it as well. But not knowing the age group we're talking about is hard to say.
Thank you. Thank you.
Did I answer the question? I'm not sure.
I don't know. Does anyone else want? Yeah, 11 and 8.
They're 11 and 8. Okay, so I think that what should happen, or the way I would approach it, is have a conversation with the parents, and about the value and the benefits of their children being exposed to Spanish, and how you that are so fluent can really help the children learn. And maybe now that we have technology, perhaps once a week you can have Zoom meetings with them where you're all practicing and talking in Spanish, and just start little suggesting little ideas that way, and maybe they will share some books that you can read. Bilingual books are great for parents that are monolingual, because you can read the story in English first and then read the story in Spanish, and you know what you're talking about or what the story is about. So that's the beauty of the bilingual books. But yeah, I would have a conversation with the parents and share some of these resources, and perhaps have a meeting once a week where you can talk to them or read them, or go through some flashcards, some words, just little by little, and see if you can get the kids engaged and excited about it. Because if the kids are excited about it, their parents are going to say, okay, then maybe I need to find a Spanish program in my neighborhood that that can help.
Melissa, I think are you raising your hand? Yes. Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to hop in and say, if you're meeting with I don't remember if it was young cousins or nieces and nephews, but if you're meeting with them virtually, Make is actually a really great way to share stories in Spanish, because you can share your screen. We've actually done a lot of this in our virtual story times. It's an excellent way for us to supplement our collection of Spanish books that are older than we'd like or less relevant than we'd like, but it's a super way to do it virtually, and you can share these interactive stories.
That's great.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we have a few other questions. There we go. Okay, Sebastián Díaz. I have a 4-month-old. When should we start speaking to her in both languages to get her started on bilingualism?
You can start right now. I was talking to my baby before he was born. And it all depends of, if, I don't know if the household is dual, Spanish, English, but if it's, there's different approaches you can take. There's the one parent, one language. There's minority language at home. There's time and place. If you follow me on my social media, I talk about that a lot, and I'm happy to send you some information. But yes, you can start like yesterday.
Okay. Marines.
Yeah, I will say that if you're in a couple, it's important to invite your partner and to explain to your partner that it's important for you to raise a bilingual child. And even if your partner doesn't speak Spanish, you need to have him on board, because if he or she's saying no, Spanish is not good, it's not important, English is better, English is cool, it's not going to happen, all these projects. So it's better to have their help or their support.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know, Catalina, who is in the backstage, do we have any more questions?
I have a question, so I might as well jump in. I'm curious. I remember maybe the US, maybe some 15 years ago, and getting the sense that Latinos who lived there did not want to teach Spanish to their kids, that they felt that teaching Spanish would single them out as immigrants, and that perhaps not avoiding Spanish and just immersing them in the American culture and English language was a way of, you know, mixing with the culture as opposed to standing out. Do you feel there's been a change since then? Because I'm talking about a long time ago, and how do you get people talking if they feel that their Latino identity might make them feel different and they don't want to feel different? I mean, if you're a teenager, you don't want to feel different. Maybe later, but not as a teenager.
Well, this has been happening for generations. So it's not something that was 20 years ago. It was, I'm 65 years old. My generation that immigrated here, my husband's 2 Greek grandmothers that immigrated here, they all wanted their children to assimilate, to, be part of that culture. And, I think, we didn't know as much as we know today. We didn't have all this education about all the benefits and the advantages and about preserving our culture through language. Language is the perfect tool to preserve culture. And, we wanted our children to really assimilate and adjust to the culture right away and not feel different. And we go back to the attitude I was mentioning before. It has to be with the parents' attitude. We want to be proud of who we are. We want to instill that pride in our children. So we wanted to go out there and not feel different. And we want to be okay with it. And, the more comfortable we are in our own skin and the more proud we are about who we are and why we want to instill the love of our culture and our language in our children, the more comfortable and confident. That's what we want. We want that confidence. We want our teenagers to feel confident to go out there and speak with an accent if she or he has one, because that's my superpower. I have an accent. I speak 2 languages. Can you speak 2 languages? More often, the person is going to say no. So, I always tell parents, we want to create that pride, that confident child that is going to go out there. And we didn't know a lot of these things all these generations before. We knew, our parents, our grandparents, they did the best they could under the circumstances. Sometimes they had to come here because of, civil unrest or political reasons, or, so many reasons why immigrants come to this country. So they did the best they could. But now, right here, 21st century, we know so much better. We want our children, our grandchildren, and now from generations forward to really be proud of their heritage and be proud of their language. And that's what we just have to kind of look forward. And I think we're accomplishing that. I think we know there's so much more information out there that tells us, you know what? Yes. In fact, in the United States, Spanish can be spoken in many of the states and in many of the little cities. And it's not only English. And English is always going to be there. We live in an English dominant world. So let's continue with the Spanish at home. Let's try and do our best. Let's find those resources that can help us. And that's I think what's going to make this a better. I mean, if I had a choice, if I could do it, I would have Spanish as part of the curriculum in every single school in the United States, every single school. And now we have dual immersion schools that are there's a whole bunch, even the public schools. Listen, when my children went to school, they were in a parochial school in my neighborhood. I was the only brown face. They were in a white environment, English dominant. I fought for me and two other parents that were not even Hispanic. They were Americans. And we fought to bring Spanish as part of the curriculum. And it took us 8 years. But let me tell you something, they stopped the program. And then all of a sudden, all the public schools around jumped in the bandwagon. And I'm here to tell you that the teacher that I brought in from Argentina, although she lived in the area, she's still there and she still runs the program. So sometimes, the parents have to really, fight for things that are going to benefit our children and just get things done. That's just the way it is. The more we as parents are involved in their education, in their bilingual education, the better for it is for a child. And I say relationship with the teachers and the librarians, that all helps a lot.
Thank you, Maritere. That was very inspiring. We are actually out of time, but we do have one last question, if you won't mind responding or answering to it. It's Brenda MTZ. My youngest isn't interested in learning or speaking Spanish, although she understands 95% of what we are saying. Any suggestions? Muchas gracias. So, yeah.
How old did she say she was? I'm sorry, I missed the age.
My youngest.
You didn't say the age. Brenda, yeah. Can you mention the age really quickly? There's many online classes that cater, age group, 0 to 5-year-olds. There's also 7-year-olds. Okay. Yeah. I have a list of suggestions that I can send you via email. I don't know if you're going to include my email in there, or if you want to follow me on my social media, send me a private message. I will send you some classes that are online. There might be some programs in your library, in your local library. And there's also another suggestion is talk to other parents in the neighborhood that perhaps have older children and have had this experience. Maybe they can give you suggestions on resources in your local area. But I am so proud of your 7-year-old for wanting to speak Spanish. So I would definitely nurture that and happy to make any suggestions privately to you.
I think we're running out of time. We're out of time, actually, but it was great having every one of you. Thank you, Maritere. Thank you, Marines. Thank you, Melissa. We had great tips. Those were all wonderful insights. It actually feels kind of short from this side of the screen. I know we discussed tons of topics, but I think it was a very rich conversation. I think that would be all from us right now. Cata, would you like to add anything?
Thank you so much. Learning a lot for us, as a digital platform with authentic Latin American books, but working from Latin America, this is like a new world. And we realized, or I have realized really, that even though we might share a language, there's still things that are different for us, like for us in our public libraries, in our schools, that work differently in dual language education programs in the US or public libraries in the US. But at the same time, I feel that we have that in a way communicating north-south between our Spanish language speakers and yours we don't know anything about our Latino communities in the US, even though a lot of these Latino communities are our brothers and sisters and uncles who left our countries 1 or 2 generations ago or weeks ago. And so in a way, I'm excited in, learning about this brotherhood and sisterhood in the US who speaks our language and who want to learn more about us. I know we know a lot about the US, but maybe not so much about Latinos in the US. We know less about them. And so I'm excited to see us speaking, and I really appreciate you all sharing your time and your knowledge and your experience. And this video will be available in our YouTube channel, so we can share it afterwards with more people and hopefully get the ball rolling in other public libraries, in schools, and homes, of course.
And just to close it off, for those of you who are still connected, you can find Make Make in the Los Angeles Public Library System, Fresno, Oakland, Berkeley, Sonoma, Denver, Austin, the city of Hialeah in Florida, Charlotte, Boston. I'm not sure, Gata, if I'm missing anyone, but if you don't know if Make Make is available at your local library, just ask. Thank you very much, for all of you, for being here.
Thank you.
Bye.